just thinking about those Occupy movements that's happening, because they're so exciting and so interesting in a lot of ways, aren't they? You know, the St Paul's thing and the Trafalgar Square thing and all the ones across the States. Because it's so different than what it was even a few years ago. Because I used to go to a lot of demos and marches and things in like the 80s and early 90s and before that, but I remember that period. And for the most part, apart from the poll tax riot, for the most part the demos and the marches were quite civil, you know, and the police were quite civil. And there wasn't anything like, at least from my memory, it might be faulty, there wasn't anything like the level of aggression from the police and security services that there seems to be in this one, and nothing like the level of kind of just ignoring by certain sectors of the media, which there certainly is with this one as well. And I've been thinking about what's that about really, because certainly prior to that, you know, the earlier demos and marches in like the 60s. And the 70s, I suppose, also, they seemed quite effective, and there was always strong police presences, and there was quite a lot of accusations of police brutality. I'm thinking about the Grosvenor Square marches in London in the 60s, and I guess the Kent State stuff in the States. There was quite a lot of aggression and hostility and police brutality, but then in this period in the 80s and 90s it just got all very benign, you know, very benign. And I think what was going on there, it seems to me at least, is a kind of realisation by the authorities that it didn't really matter. In fact, I remember reading a publication by I can't remember, it was published by Autonom Media, which is like this it's not exactly an anarchist press, but it's a kind of liberal press called I can't remember what it was called, but it was talking about electronic civil disobedience anyway, and the idea was that they're trying to take back the streets, you know, they kind of hold Stop the City March, that kind of thing that the anarchists did in the 80s and 90s, that those things were being permitted and not being clamped down on because it didn't matter anymore. You know, if the streets were important, and if real traffic and really important state business and financial business was being done on the streets, then it would be important to reclaim them, it would be important to take to them. But, so this particular text said, nothing really happens on the streets apart from some tourists and some shopping stuff. So you can march all you like, you're not really interrupting anything, you're not really stopping the city, you're just annoying tourists really, or possibly entertaining tourists even. And so for that reason, you know, the marches were, nobody cared, you know, there was no reason to stop protesters, and there's no reason to clamp down on marches and demonstrations because they weren't really doing any harm to the state. But it seems to me, yeah, so just to continue that a little bit, this book, talking about electronic civil disobedience, was basically saying that, you know, the new ground for civil disobedience, the new place we should take to, was what they used to call cyberspace in the good old days. Because that's where the real business happened. You know, if you wanted to stop the flow of financial traffic, there's no point in standing in front of cars. You have to kind of put yourself in front of the flow of information that's going through the networks, and interfere with that motion, because that's the stuff that really counts. That was the thesis, and so there was lots of calls for kind of white hat hacking and that kind of behaviour as a way of taking to the electronic streets rather than the literal streets, so stopping the virtual city rather than the real city. Not that it really happened, but it seems to me that something's different's happened now. You know, because of, you know, developments in web technology, and particularly developments in kind of citizen journalism and citizen broadcasting, even, you know, daft things like YouTube. It's not exactly daft, but you know what I mean. And that kind of completely interlacing of the electronic and the real realms, so that, you know, activity on the streets is automatically and instantly broadcast. I mean, there's more cameras at these events than there are people, aren't there, half the time? And the call of those kind of events, of the Occupy movements, are all to do with, you know, the whole world is watching. I find it so moving when I hear that. I don't know why. The whole world is watching, and you know, as I say, it's this complete imbrication of the virtual electronic realm and the physical realm. So it's not quite the same anymore, you know, where it used to be the case, as I say, that stopping the city was pointless because the streets didn't really carry any important traffic. It's because at the same time as those, you know, the streets are kind of overlaid with the electronic realm as well now, aren't they? Because of all the cameras and the instant journalism, instant feedback. So it seems to me you got the both now. So it just feels like a bit of a resurgence in protest culture because of that. You know what I mean? Because it's combining the best of both things. Because being live and in the streets together brings you all that kind of mutual knowledge stuff that Steven Pinker talks about, where you get to see the people that you're sharing a constitution of complaint with, but also it's existing in this other realm where you really are, you know, occupying the same bit stream as the money is occupying almost, and you're, you know, the whole world is watching everything you do and say and what the police do and say. Yeah, fascinating, I think. So when you occupy these places, you're also occupying these places, seems to me, and that's a good thing.